This is an absolute beast.
Villers.
Pit Boss 2. Even though it's huge, it's a balance of everything. Starting with a physical balance, material balance. S35VN, the frame is titanium. Clip, screws, other components. Where it's not inevitable, it is titanium. I'd like to put an emphasis on this. If you make a knife out of the most stainless of steels, which is currently MagnaCut, but like Benchmade, you're gonna leave basic stainless, and stainless is not rust-proof steel. When this knife gets wet, the dissimilar metals will create galvanic corrosion. When you make a knife out of less fashionable S35VN, which is a very stainless steel itself, and then all your hardware is made out of titanium, different types of steel are segregated from each other, then this knife will have a lot less chance to corrode than this one, even though the blade itself made out of a slightly more corrosion-resistant steel. I don't consider button locks safe for EDC. They unlock so easily when you're using your knife hard. But this guy has a safety lock, which does not allow the push button to disengage. It's black G10 with orange inlay. See this orange? Let's see if a little bit of sand and silt will stop it. A little wash. And it's good to go. You can hardly see that there is a 4 1/4 inch blade in your jean pocket. All right, let's test this blade already. If you follow ADV Villers product line, you will see that most of his knives, if not all of them, are made in S35VN steel. It is one of the best balanced steels for making pocket knives. And I believe that Chris Reeves pioneered the use of it, another South African. What is it with the South African dudes? They know how to pick the balance over the kitsch, over the gimmick. If I read it correctly, I think it has everything to do with being a member of the South African Knife Maker Guild. Yet I can see clear differences in the design philosophy between Chris Reeve and ADV Villers. This handle shape, for example, is basically inviting you to chop. Oops. Hard knocks. To see if I can get the safety to unlock when I do this. Nothing. Balance. All right, before the sun sets, let's take it home and assess the damage, if there's any. So I'm back from testing this knife, and here's the aftermath. The only thing that I noticed so far is the pivot came completely loose. Not completely, but there's a lot of side-to-side play. And I'm pretty sure it's because the pivot hardware was not Loctited. Torx 15 fits, and yes, it was completely loosened up. This is interesting. It looks like the other side is different hardware. Okay, so here's your pivot and the spacer, nicely recessed, by the way, into the G10 here. Nothing mysterious here, I don't think so. All right, multi-row ceramic bowl. Are they ceramic bowl? Let's see. Yeah, non-magnetic ceramic bowl. The good news here, it's this type of bearing is extremely corrosion resistant. The bad news is it is a polymer frame. There's some kind of interesting something going on. There's some kind of roll pin or something in there. I don't understand what it does. Let me see. This unscrews from both sides. What is this? What is it for? I suspect it's designed to set the distance on the pivot so that no matter how much you crank on the pivot, it will bottom out on this here pin, and it's not a roll pin. Anyway, it'll bottom out and set the distance so that no matter what happens, you will not be over tightening the pivot. The pin will allow the two screws to come in contact and allow you to set the proper torque. I'll use this opportunity to clean out. I did get some sand here. There's a little bit of silt and sand from dropping it into the river. I'll clean that out. I broke a knife with a similar cutout. A quality knife was the Protec Malibu. This thing broke clean off, so I'm not a big fan of creating this much weakness in the geometry here. Well, I guess they rely on a thicker cross-section because it is thick. 178 thousandths of an inch or 4.5 millimeters. All right, time to reassemble by screwing this back in. This is a very unusual design. I haven't seen this construction on any other knives. Let me know if you have seen that anywhere else. I'd be interested to find out. I think that's a pretty decent engineering right here. Okay, so how are we gonna do it? Get the blade lined up in there. So I'm compressing the button, lining up the blade. I need to stand that up and then just feed it onto this pivot. Oh, that went pretty well. I am impressed. I'm not sure it's going to show in the video, but right here, the pivot barrel does not come fully to the surface of the G10. So when I put the spacer, it sits even deeper. So the only part that's engaging, you can see on the bottom of that screw, there is a sort of spherical surface right here. And it engages the pin that I showed you, and it creates sort of like a pin bearing. So what it will do, I think by design, if I crank it down, it should still be operable even at full torque. So let me torque on it. So it's pretty torqued right now. Let's see. Perhaps a drop of oil. I don't like putting oil. Those are self-lubricating bearings that nylon material considered to be self-lubricating. Yeah, so there's no need for me to do that. Question is, do I need to lock it with a Loctite? When in doubt, use Loctite. There's enough to engage this thread. Anyway, I think when you are subjecting a threaded joint to forces other than clamping, so when you're applying lateral loads or transaxial loads to it, I think the clearances between the threads allow it to move ever so slightly, so it will lose its torque, and therefore some kind of locking device like Loctite, or maybe locking washer are prudent. So right now it's cranked pretty good. This is actually very impressive. When I felt that the pivot came loose, I felt that I found potential Achilles heel of this knife, but it's not the case. The actual design, that pinned through design that allows these two fasteners bottom out onto each other, this is an extra step that I have not seen any of the custom knives makers to date employ. I feel like doing size comparisons just because it's such an awesome knife. So this is not my biggest folding knife. My biggest folding knife is this Espada, but it's like a gag gift knife more than anything else, right? So out of the reasonable folders, this here is the biggest one. Here's my Manix 2 XL. I know you like seeing Medford knives. Here they are. They are comparable. The difference is minor. You probably won't notice the difference if you already have this fighter folder for flipper, fighter flipper. Now, the price, however, you can buy 3 of these for the price of one of those. This is a Shaman. Makes Shaman look like a mini knife. And obviously this is Manix 2 lightweight. Here's the Adamas. Actually, I'm surprised that I thought Adamas will feel a lot smaller. But it's about 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch shorter blade. Here's the fixed blade Adamas. Yeah. Yeah, that's the same size as the fixed blade. Now, obviously, the fixed blade in this case will be actually lighter than this guy. Well, let's see. We know this is 7.6 ounces and the Adamas 6.6. So 1 ounce difference. I added these scales. I brag about this every time I have a chance. This is made out of a PMAG. And you can see right here, I have deliberately left a little bit of a PMAG writing right here. That's a PMAG, and if you guessed that this is 556 brass, you guessed correctly. And that was a fun project. This carries really well because of how well it's balanced, open or closed. In the pocket, it doesn't feel like a humongous knife. What's the difference here? 2 ounces, 2.2 ounces difference between these two knives do make a difference in the pocket. Clip is one of the best pocket clips I've seen on a knife, and I am super impressed. The inner engineer and a knife nerd in me is excited about how they designed the pivot. This is awesome. That should be a feature on all knives. I love compound grinds. This is evidence of people actually giving a damn about what they're delivering. A finish is great. You saw me beating up on it. There's not very minor scratching right here. You see it in this area. That's okay. That's a working knife. But I have never seen a knife that is that big and that hard-working, and yet that gentlemanly as this knife. This is pretty freaking impressive.